The knife slipped from my trembling hand, clattering against the marble countertop like a gunshot in the sterile silence of the penthouse kitchen. Blood welled up from the shallow cut on my thumb, but it was nothing compared to the deeper wound ripping open in my chest as I stared at the man across from me. My husband of 3 months, David Hale, the untouchable CEO of Hale Enterprises, his ice-blue eyes unreadable as he adjusted his cufflinks without a flicker of remorse. "You think this changes anything, Joseph?" he said, his voice a low, velvet blade that sliced through the air between us, leaving me gasping for the truth I just unearthed in the hidden drawer of his desk. Photos of us from weeks ago, me laughing with a servant who wasn't a stranger at all. I never believed in fairy tales, not the ones with glass slippers or poisoned apples. Anyway, growing up in the Rust Belt decay of Pittsburgh, where steel mills coughed their last breaths and dreams rusted alongside the bridges, survival was the only story that mattered. My parents had drilled that into me from the cradle. Joseph Riley, the good son, the reliable one, the kid who'd scrape by on scholarships and odd jobs to make something of himself. But life has a way of twisting the plot, and mine took a sharp left turn the day my father's gambling debts caught up to us like a freight train with no brakes. It was a humid August afternoon in 2024 when the call came. I was elbow-deep in grease at the auto shop, fixing a carburetor on a beat-up Ford that smelled like regret and cheap cigarettes. My phone buzzed against my thigh, and I wiped my hands on my overalls before answering. "Joe, it's Dad." His voice cracked like old leather, the kind that had spent too many nights in smoky backrooms. "We need to talk. Now." By evening, I was in a sleek conference room downtown, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Allegheny River, where the water looked more like molten lead than anything alive. Across from me sat David Hale, flanked by lawyers whose suits probably cost more than my annual rent. He was everything I'd imagined a billionaire to be, mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and eyes like chips of Arctic ice. His dark hair was impeccably styled, not a strand out of place, and he wore a charcoal suit that screamed power, tailored to perfection, hugging his frame like it was born to it. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at me directly at first. His gaze was fixed on the contract in front of him, as if I were just another line item to sign off on. "Your father's debts to Mr. Hale totaled $2.3 million. One of the lawyers droned, sliding the papers toward me. "Non-negotiable. But Mr. Hale is prepared to forgive it all in exchange for an arrangement." My stomach plummeted. Arrangement. The word hung in the air like exhaust fumes. I'd heard whispers about David Hale, tech mogul, philanthropist on paper, ruthless dealmaker in the shadows. Hale Enterprises dominated everything from AI startups to urban redevelopment, turning decaying cities like mine into playgrounds for the elite. And now, he wanted me. Not my money, I had none, or my skills, which were limited to wrenches and welding torches. No, he wanted my name on a marriage certificate. A merger of convenience, they called it, to satisfy some archaic clause in his family's trust that demanded a stable union for him to fully inherit control of the company. Gay marriage had been legal for years, but for men like David, it was just another checkbox. I laughed, a bitter bark that echoed off the glass walls. "You're joking. I'm not a prop, and my dad's not collateral." David's eyes finally met mine then, cool and assessing, like he was pricing a vintage watch. "Your father signed the markers, Mr. Riley. He's out of options." Hospitals don't take IOUs for his chemo bills. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Marry me. 6 months. You'll walk away with enough to bury his debts and start fresh. Refuse, and the collectors start with his house. Then yours. The room spun. Dad's cancer had eaten through our savings like acid. Mom had passed years ago, leaving us to fend alone. I thought of the eviction notices piling up, the shop's lights flickering on borrowed time. What choice did I have? I signed, my hand shaking so bad the ink bled like a wound. The wedding was a farce 2 weeks later, in a private ceremony at his estate outside the city, all steel and glass perched on a hill like a fortress. No guests, just witnesses and an officiant who looked bored. I wore a rented tux that pinched at the shoulders. David looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, his vow delivered in a monotone that chilled me to the bone. I do, I echoed, feeling the words settle like chains. We moved into his Manhattan penthouse immediately, a sprawling beast on the 78th floor of a midtown tower, with views of the Empire State Building that mocked my small-town roots. The place was a monument to minimalism, white walls, black leather, abstract art that cost more than my life. Servants, discreet, efficient shadows, handled everything. I was the trophy husband, paraded at galas where champagne flowed like water and whispers followed us like smoke. David was distant, polite in public, a glacier in private. Our marriage was a contract, not a bed of roses, separate bedrooms, no expectations. He worked until dawn. I job hunted by day, haunted by the what-ifs. But there was one servant who caught my eye from the start. Elias, they called him, a quiet guy in his late 20s, with messy brown hair that fell over hazel eyes and a build that spoke of hard labor rather than luxury. He was the one who brought my coffee in the mornings, black and scalding, just how I liked it without me saying a word. His smile was tentative, like he was testing the waters, and he'd linger a beat too long, asking about my day with a warmth that felt foreign in that cold palace. "You're not from here," he'd said one morning, leaning against the counter while I nursed my mug. Rain lashed the windows, turning the city into a watercolor smear. "Pittsburgh," I replied, surprised by the ease of it. "You," he shrugged, wiping down the granite with a rag. "Everywhere and nowhere. Job like this? It's temporary." His voice had a lilt, Midwestern maybe, soft around the edges. We talked about the grind of the city, the ache of missing home-cooked meals, the way jazz clubs on the Lower East Side could make you forget your name. Elias made the penthouse bearable, a crack of light in the endless gray. David noticed, of course. One night, after a board meeting that ran late, he found us in the kitchen, me laughing at Elias's story about a botched delivery in Queens, him flipping pancakes like it was no big deal. David's shadow fell across the doorway, and the air thickened. "Elias," he said, voice flat as a blade. "That's enough for tonight." Elias straightened, his easy grin fading. "Yes, sir." He vanished like smoke, leaving me with David's stare, heavy and unyielding. "What's your problem?" I snapped, heat rising in my cheeks. "My problem," he echoed, loosening his tie with deliberate slowness, "is you treating my home like a frat house. Remember why you're here, Joseph?" I did. God, I did. But as the weeks blurred into a monotonous rhythm, me applying for marketing gigs that ghosted me, David vanishing into his empire, Elias became my anchor. We'd steal moments, him teaching me to brew proper espresso, me sharing dog-eared paperbacks from my backpack. There was a spark there, undeniable, the kind that starts as friction and builds to fire. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Hudson, he brushed flour from my cheek after a baking disaster, his thumb lingering on my skin. My breath hitched, his eyes darkened. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that touch. Then David walked in. The fallout was swift, a storm cloud rolling in without warning. David didn't yell, that wasn't his style. He dismantled with precision, like a surgeon excising a tumor. The next morning, Elias was gone. No note, no explanation, just an empty staff roster when I cornered the head of household. Reassigned, she said curtly, avoiding my eyes. Mr. Hale's orders. I confronted him in his office that afternoon, the door slamming behind me like a punctuation mark. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves loomed, filled with leather-bound tomes that smelled of old money and older secrets. David sat behind a desk the size of a small car, tapping at his laptop, not even glancing up. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice cracking on the edge of fury. He closed the screen with a soft click, finally deigning to look at me. Close. Without the armor of boardrooms. He was almost beautiful, high cheekbones, a faint scar along his jaw that begged for a story. But his expression was a fortress. Elias served his purpose. "You're my husband, Joseph." "Act like it. Your husband." I laughed, the sound hollow. "I'm your debt payoff. Your PR stunt. Don't pretend this is about us." His lips thinned. "The only tell. It's about control. Mine. Yours would be wise to align." He stood, rounding the desk with predatory grace, stopping inches away. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and steel, invaded my space. "You want to play house with the help? Fine. But cross me, and your father's house of cards collapses." I shoved past him, heart pounding like a war drum. That night, I lay in my cavernous bed, staring at the city lights that never slept, wondering if freedom was just another illusion in this concrete jungle. Pittsburgh felt like a lifetime ago. The boy who'd fixed engines and dreamed of Broadway now navigated minefields of mergers and malice. The galas ramped up after that, David's way of reminding me of my role. The first big one was at the Met, a fundraiser for some arts foundation that reeked of laundering egos. I stood at his side in a tailored black suit that made me feel like an imposter, smiling for cameras that flashed like accusations. Women in gowns like liquid diamonds cooed over us. The Hales, power couple of the year, while men clapped David on the back, their eyes sliding over me like I was scenery. He was magnetic in the spotlight, charming when he chose, quoting Keats or dissecting market trends with equal ease. But when the crowd thinned, his hand on my elbow was possessive, guiding me through the throng like a prized asset. "Smile," he murmured once, his breath warm against my ear. "You're selling the dream." I wanted to hate him. God, I tried. But there were cracks, moments when the mask slipped. Like the night after a brutal earnings call, when I found him in the library, Tyascu, nursing a scotch. Thunder rattled the windows, a nor'easter whipping the skyline into frenzy. He looked human, vulnerable, even with shadows under his eyes that spoke of battles I couldn't see. "Can't sleep?" I asked, hovering in the doorway. He glanced up, surprise flickering before the walls rebuilt. Go back to bed, Joseph. But I didn't. I poured myself a glass and sat across from him, the leather creaking under me. Silence stretched, thick as the storm outside. Finally, he spoke, voice rough. You remind me of someone. Carefree. Unscarred. Who? I pressed, leaning forward. His gaze sharpened, then shuddered. No one you need to know. He drained his glass and left, the door clicking shut like a lock turning. Elias haunted me, though a ghost in the machine of our farce. I'd catch myself scanning the staff, hoping for a familiar face, a hazel-eyed smile. Weeks turned to a month, and the loneliness gnawed deeper. I threw myself into freelance graphic design, scraping gigs from Upwork that paid in pennies but kept my sanity intact. Late nights, I'd wander the penthouse, sketching cityscapes on napkins, the hum of the fridge my only companion. Then, the betrayal bloomed like a bruise. It started with a misplaced file, David's assistant fumbling a stack of papers during a rare shared dinner, takeout tie, his concession to normalcy. A photo fluttered out, me and Elias in the kitchen, mid-laugh, time-stamped 2 days before he vanished. On the back, in David's precise script, monitor attachment. My blood ran cold. Attachment? I rifled through the rest. Candid shots of us talking, timestamps aligning with every stolen moment. He'd been watching, photographing. And Elias, not a servant at all, but a plant. David's eyes in the shadows, testing me, toying with me like a pawn in his endless game of trust. Rage boiled over. I stormed his office at midnight, the city a glittering abyss below. He was there, silhouetted against the skyline, phone to his ear, barking orders in clipped tones. I slammed the photos down, scattering them like confetti from hell. You sick bastard, I hissed. Elias was you? Disguised? Spying on me? What the fuck is wrong with you? He hung up slowly, turning with the calm of a man who'd anticipated the explosion. Joseph, no! I cut him off, voice breaking. I obeyed. I played your game. Married you to save my family. And you pretended to be some nobody to what? See if I'd cheat? Break me? His face twisted. The first real emotion I'd seen. Regret? Pain? It wasn't like that. Elias was a way to understand you. Without the walls. Understand. I laughed, tears stinging. You don't get it. I fell for him. For you. You idiot. The real you. The one who burned toast and hummed off-key. Not this Ice King bullshit. The confession hung there, raw and exposed. David's eyes widened, a fracture in the facade. He stepped closer, the air crackling. You think I don't feel it? This marriage was forced on me too, family legacy. Boardroom vultures. But you make me want more. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb tracing my lip. And damn if my body didn't betray me, leaning in. The kiss was inevitable, a collision of fire and frost, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that belied his control. We crashed against the desk, papers flying, his fingers tangling in my hair as I tasted salt and scotch and secrets. It was messy, desperate, the kind of kiss that rewrites rules. But as we broke apart, gasping, reality seeped in. This changes nothing, he whispered, forehead against mine. The contract stands. Changed everything. The morning after tasted like ashes. Sunlight sliced through the blinds like judgment, illuminating the wreckage of David's office. Upended files, a cracked tumbler on the floor, the echo of our bodies pressed together in frantic need. I woke in my own bed, sheets twisted around me like accusations, the ghost of his touch lingering on my skin. Bruises bloomed on my hips where his fingers had gripped too tight, a map of surrender I couldn't erase. He was gone by the time I emerged, a note on the kitchen island in his slashing script. Meeting in D.C. Back tonight. We talk. No apology, no poetry, just facts, like always. I crumpled it, hurling it into the sink, but the words burned. Talk? After he'd infiltrated my life like a virus, disguised as the one person who made it tolerable. I needed air, the kind that didn't cost a fortune. Ditching the penthouse, I hit the streets, Midtown's chaos a balm for my frayed nerves. Horns blared, vendors hawked pretzels steaming with mustard, and tourists snapped selfies against the backdrop of yellow cabs. I wandered to Central Park, the leaves turning crimson underfoot, crunching like brittle promises. Settling on a bench near the Bethesda fountain, I pulled out my sketch pad, letting charcoal fly across the page. David's face, split one half the stern CEO, the other Elias's soft smile, merging in a surreal blur. My phone buzzed. Dad. Joe? How's the big city treatin' ya? His voice was thinner now, the chemo sapping his baritone, but laced with that old optimism. Fine, I lied, watching a jogger streak by. You eating? Bills paid, he chuckled, wheezing. You're Mr. Hail's a miracle. Sent a check covers everything. Says you're family now. Family. The word twisted like a knife. I hung up after promises I might break, guilt gnawing deeper. David had saved us, yes, but at what cost? My autonomy, my heart pawns in his chess game. By evening, I was back, pacing the penthouse like a caged wolf. The door clicked open at 9 sharp. David entered, shedding his coat with mechanical precision. He looked wrecked, ties loosened, stubble shadowing his jaw, eyes bloodshot from whatever demons chased him on the Acela. We need rules, he said, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon without asking. Handing me one, his fingers brushed mine. Electric. No more games. I snatched it, downing half in one gulp. Rules? You spied on me, David. Pretended to be someone else. That's not a game. That's betrayal. He winced, setting his glass down. I know. Elias was an experiment. My therapist suggested immersion to bridge the gap. I thought if I saw you raw, without the pressure. He trailed off, rubbing his temples. I'm shit at this, Joseph. Relationships. My parents' marriage was a battlefield. Mine with you was supposed to be bloodless. Therapist. The word humanized him, cracked the monolith. I softened, against my will. So what now? We fuck and forget? Or do I get the real you? No disguises. His laugh was low, surprised. The real me terrifies even me. He closed the distance, hands framing my face. But try? With me. We did. That night marked the shift, from obligation to something tentative, alive. Dinner became ritual. Me cooking pasta Alfredo from a Pittsburgh recipe. Him opening up over Chianti about the orphanages he'd escaped. The board that plotted his downfall. Sex was revelation, slow at first, exploratory, his body a landscape of taut muscle and hidden scars. One ran along his ribs, from a boarding school mishap. He murmured against my neck, as I traced it with lips and tongue. He was vocal in bed, demands laced with pleas. Joseph, please. His control shattering in waves that left us both wrecked, tangled in silk sheets. Publicly, we sold the lie harder, hands intertwined at galas, stolen kisses for the tabloids. Hale's heartthrob husband splashed across page 6, and for a moment, felt real. We weekend in the Hamptons, his beach house a weathered shingle affair where waves crashed like applause. There, barefoot on the sand, he taught me to surf, wiping out spectacularly, laughing until our sides ached. You're a natural disaster, he'd tease, pulling me up, salt water dripping from lashes. But shadows loomed. Whispers at events, Hale's marrying for the optics, trust clause, and worse emails I glimpsed on his laptop. From a board member named Victor Lang, the union's a sham. Push for annulment. Leverage the boys' debts. David's jaw clenched when I mentioned it, but he brushed it off. Corporate noise. Ignore. I tried. God, I tried. But doubt festered, a slow poison. Then came the high tide of conflict, the Hale Enterprises holiday party, a glittering affair at the plaza. Crystal chandeliers dripped light like diamonds, jazz swelled from a live band. David was in his element, schmoozing donors, but his hand never left the small of my back, an anchor in the sea of suits. Victor Lang cornered us near the bar, a weasel-faced man with a Rolex that screamed insecurity. David, darling, introduced the arm candy. His eyes raked me, dismissive. Joseph, David said evenly, arm tightening around me. My husband, Lang smirked, sipping his martini. Husband. Charming. Though I hear the vows were coerced. Debts. Was it? Tragic. The room tilted. David's face paled, but he recovered with steel. Mind your drinks, Victor. Or your seat on the board. We fled to the balcony, the winter air biting through our tuxes. Snow flurried, dusting Central Park South like powdered sugar. He's bluffing, David insisted, but his voice wavered. Is he? I whirled on him. How deep does this go? Did you tell the board about Dad? Use me as bait. No. He reached for me, but I jerked back. Liar. The word exploded. Elias was the test. Now this? I'm done being your puppet. I stormed out, hailing a cab into the night, the city a blur of lights and lies. Back at the penthouse, I packed a duffel essentials, sketches, the cheap wedding band I'd never worn. By dawn, I was on a Greyhound to Pittsburgh, the skyline shrinking in the rearview like a bad dream. But dreams have a way of following. Pittsburgh welcomed me back with open arms and closed fists. A steel-gray sky spitting sleet, the Monongahela River churning like my gut. Dad's house was a sagging Victorian on the south side, porch light flickering against the dusk. He hugged me fierce when I showed, bones brittle under his flannel, but his eyes sharp. Trouble in paradise. Kid. I collapsed onto the worn couch, the springs groaning like old friends. You could say that, over weak coffee and canned soup. I spilled it, the marriage, the disguise, the boardroom vultures. He listened, nodding slow, the chemo port peeking from his collar like a badge of war. Rich folks play dirty, Joe. But you're Riley stock, tough as Manel alloy. Don't let 'em bend you. His words anchored me, but sleep evaded. I tossed in my childhood bed, posters of Springsteen peeling from the walls, the scent of motor oil seeping from the garage below. Dreams tangled, David's lips on mine, Elias's laugh morphing into a snarl, Victor's smirk echoing like thunder. By morning, my phone was a minefield, missed calls from David, texts stacking like accusations. Where are you? Talk to me. Then voicemails, his voice cracking on the last, Joseph, please. It's not what you think. Come back. I deleted them, but doubt crept in. A week blurred. Shifts at the old shop. Grease under nails a comfort. Evenings nursing Dad through treatments. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. Fluorescent lights buzzing like angry hornets. One night, post-chemo haze, he gripped my hand. Don't throw it away, son. That Hale boy's got demons, but so do you. Love's the forge that tempers him. Love. The word lodged like shrapnel. Was it that, or just Stockholm in a silk suit? The hammer fell on day 10. A knock at dawn. 2 suits on the porch, clipboards in hand. Joseph Riley? We're from Hale Enterprises Legal. Mr. Hale requests your return. Failure to comply voids the debt forgiveness agreement. My blood iced. Bullshit. That's coercion. One smirked. Read the fine print. Signatures bind. They left papers fluttering on the welcome mat like dead leaves. Fury propelled me back to the city that afternoon, train rattling like my resolve. The penthouse loomed, a glass monolith mocking my flight. David was waiting in the living room, sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled, a far cry from the polished CEO. Relief flooded his face, then wariness. You came. For Dad, I snapped, tossing the papers at his feet. Not you. Call off your dogs. He flinched, kneeling to gather them. I didn't send them. Victor acting rogue. He's pushing for my ouster, using our marriage as leverage. Our marriage. The phrase stung. Leverage. That's all I am. No. He stood, closing in, desperation etching lines around his eyes. You're everything. I fucked up, Elias, the secrets. But losing you, it's dismantling me. His honesty cracked my armor. We really talked, for hours, bourbon loosening tongues. He confessed the trust clause's stranglehold. His fear of intimacy born from a father who equated love with weakness. I disguised as Elias because I was scared. Of you. Of feeling this. I saw it then, the boy behind the boardrooms, orphaned young, building empires to fill voids. My hand found his, tentative. Scared of what? This. He kissed me, soft, apologetic, the kind that mends rather than claims. We fell into bed, bodies sinking in a rhythm born of ache, slow thrusts, whispered names, his tears wetting my shoulder as climax shattered us. Dawn brought fragile peace. We vowed transparency, therapy together, no more shadows. Holidays healed, Thanksgiving at Dad's, David chopping onions with amateur flair, earning laughs and wary approval. Christmas in the Hamptons, snow blanketing dunes, us bundled on the porch, his head on my shoulder as stars pricked the velvet sky. But Victor lurked, a serpent in the garden. January thawed the betrayal's frost, Rumors swirled. Anonymous leaks to the Times. Hale's sham wedding. Debt and deceit. Stocks dipped. Board meetings turned hostile. David shielded me, but strain showed. Sleepless nights. Scotch for breakfast. The climax crashed like a rogue wave. Valentine's Day. A black tie auction at Sotheby's. We arrived arm in arm. A united front. But Victor ambushed mid-event, cornering David in a side alcove. I followed, hidden by velvet drapes, overhearing the venom. "You think the boy's loyal?" Victor sneered, voice oily. I paid him 20 grand to bolt. He took it. David. Your prince is a pauper at heart. My world fractured. Paid? To leave? Rage and hurt collided as David shoved him back. Lies. Joseph's not for sale, but doubt seeded. That night, in our suite overlooking Times Square, I confronted him. Did you know? About the payoff. His eyes widened. Betrayed. What? No, Victor's bluffing. I pulled up my bank app, nothing. But the seed sprouted thorns. Days later, proof arrived. A manila envelope slid under the door. Photos of me at the shop. Time-stamped post-Pittsburgh. With a cashier's check stub for $20,000. Forged signature in my name. Victor struck back, claiming I'd been complicit from the start. Bribed to marry, now bribed to sabotage. The board convened an emergency session. David fought, but polls tilted. Resign or we expose the fraud, they demanded. He chose me, or so he said. That rooftop confrontation, rain sheeting down like judgment, I hurled the evidence at him. Your empire or us? Victor says I'm the fraud. David's face crumpled, soaked and savage. Fuck the empire. I choose you. He dropped to his knees in the puddle, clutching my shirt. I love you, Joseph. Disguises, debts, none of it matters. Love. There it was, unmasked. But betrayal's echo roared. Had he ever trusted me fully? Tears mixed with rain as I pulled him up. Our kiss salt and storm. Prove it. Fight for us. He did or tried. The climax peaked in the boardroom. David presenting counter-evidence. Hacked emails proving Victor's embezzlement. My innocence. Fists flew, metaphorical and literal, security hauling Victor out in cuffs. Victory tasted bittersweet. The company saved. But scars lingered. Spring unfurled in New York like a hesitant apology. Cherry blossoms dusting the high line. The air thick with promise and exhaust. The scandal faded to footnotes. Hale Enterprises rebounded. David at the helm with a softer edge. Crediting personal growth in earnings calls that made analysts chuckle. Victor rotted in Rikers. His schemes unraveling like cheap thread. But the real battle waged in quieter arenas. Trust rebuilt brick by brick. We dove into therapy. A cramped office in Chelsea where Dr. Lena, a no-nonsense dyke with a buzz cut and zero patience for bullshit, prodded our wounds. David, vulnerability isn't weakness. It's your superpower. To me, Joseph, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing presence. Sessions bled into dates. Dive bars in the village where he butchered karaoke to Sinatra. Me dragging him to indie flicks at the Angelica. Popcorn fights turning to makeouts in the dark. Sex evolved too, from frantic releases to languid worship. Mornings tangled in sunlight. His fingers mapping my spine like braille. You're my home, he'd murmur. Voice husky. As I arched under him. The city humming approval beyond the glass. Dad's remission came in May. A scan declaring clear margins. and we celebrated with a backyard barbecue. David manning the grill in an apron that read, "Kiss the Cook," flipping burgers with theatrical flair. Neighbors gawked at the billionaire slumming it in khakis, but Dad clapped him on the back. "Welcome to the family, son. For real this time." Yet humanism's core isn't tidy bows. It's the mess of growth. Doubts resurfaced in July, during a heat wave that turned the penthouse into a sauna. I found old photos, Elias-era candid, tucked in a drawer like relics. Jealousy flared. Irrational. Was he better? Freer? David pulled me to the couch, sweat-slick skin sticking. Elias was a mask. You're the man who sees through it. We made love there, slow and affirming, reclaiming shadows. The true test came in September, a gala for LGBTQ plus youth shelters, David's pet cause, born from his own closeted teens. He was slated to keynote, but stage fright gripped him pre-speech, hands shaking as he paced our hotel suite. What if they see the fraud? The cold CEO who faked his way to love. I cupped his face, thumbs stroking jaw. They'll see the man who fought for it, who loves fiercely, flaws and all. On stage, he poured out debts, disguises, redemption not as confession, but triumph. The crowd rose, thunderous, and backstage, his kiss was gratitude incarnate. Fall deepened our roots. We adopted a mutt from the ASPCA, a scruffy terrier named Scout, who chewed David's loafers but melted his reserve. Walks in Prospect Park became sacraments. Leaves carpeting paths, his hand in mine, conversations weaving futures, maybe a house upstate, kids via surrogate, a life beyond ledgers. But the arc bent toward reflection, not erasure. One crisp November eve, anniversary of our wedding farce, we climbed that rooftop, the city a tapestry of lights. No rain this time, just stars winking through smog. I pulled the hidden letter from my pocket, not the betrayal note, but one I'd written months back, words of forgiveness I'd withheld. "Read it," I said, pressing it into his palm. His voice trembled over the lines. "David, I chose you not the empire, not the ease. You, with your scars and schemes. Because in the disguise, I saw the heart. Love, Joseph." Tears tracked his cheeks. "By Kitch or Ko How," he whispered, echoing a half-remembered Vietnamese phrase from my travels, tragedy or happy ending. "Human," I replied, pulling him close. "Ours." We stood there, entwined against the wind, the skyline a testament. America, land of reinvention, where forced vows could forge something true. Betrayal's sting faded to wisdom. Love, not conquest, the real merger. In the end, it wasn't about the CEO or the servant, but two men choosing each other, raw, real, resilient. And as the first snowflake drifted down, melting on our joined hands, I knew we'd obey no contracts but our own.